friends, welcome back. I'm glad to have you here today on another video. Today's video is full feeds, and we're going to talk about why full feeds are important, what happens when we do feed as full feeds, what happens when we don't feed as full feeds, and dive into all that good stuff. So I'm Dorit Shoshani, and I'm your sleep consultant here to help you with tips and insights on how to make sleep better for you and your family. Okay, guys, so for those of you who don't know me, I have 4 children, and I want to tell you a little story that really kind of sheds light on the importance of full feeds. So my 2 girls were born in the States, and I was very on top of things. Of course, I'm the sleep consultant. Everything was just so. They slept beautifully. We never had any issues. My husband never saw the value of being a sleep consultant. He just thought baby sleep. Like, this is what happens because our kids or our girls slept. And then we moved countries, moved all the way across the ocean. We relocated to Israel, and my son was born here. And he was born before we received all of our things, all of my books, all of my props, everything that we would need to kind of feel situated. But that doesn't mean that I didn't need to take care of my son. So I remember kind of contemplating with my husband how we were going to go about just life with a new baby. And he looked at me and he goes, maybe you could take a break. Maybe you could just relax a bit and not be the sleep consultant. Just be like a normal person. Just like wing it. Just do whatever you have to do. Nothing's going to go wrong. I mean, kids sleep, don't they? And I remember listening to him thinking, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll dare to do that. Should I do that? And I remember thinking, let's do that. Let's see what that's like. Let's just wing it. Let's just do whatever we think needs to happen in the moment. And I was breastfeeding. Literally, I'm talking about the first days, when we got home from the hospital. And so I decided to feed on demand. I was feeding on demand. Whenever he would cry, I would feed him. I know that that helps with milk supply, so I was eager to do that. And I wanted to make sure that I had enough milk for him. And I found myself nursing on demand 24/7, because that's what it means to nurse on demand. It means we don't really ever know if our child is hungry. It's like he's crying, so he's probably hungry. So then you stick him on the boob. And then they eat a little bit, but that's enough because they weren't really hungry. It was just a snack. And then the next time they're crying, you think they're hungry again. And so this was kind of the way it went, and I was okay with it for a while. I have to say that I remember it was about 4 weeks in, which sounds so small, I know. But for me, it was a big deal, running a house with 2 other older kids. Now this baby, I'm in a foreign country. My husband's working during the day. I need to run my days. It was hard. And we got to the 4-week mark. I remember actually my niece, my favorite niece, she had an event in the evening. I think she had just graduated from the Army, and that's probably not how you say it. You don't graduate from the Army, but she had an event that night, and my entire family was going to go, and I couldn't go because I had just given birth and I had to be with the baby, and I chose to stay home. And so they all left, and the house was empty, and it was evening time, and I remember Nathaniel, my son, was crying, and I thought, okay, I'll feed him. And I fed him, and it didn't soothe him enough, because when I stopped feeding him, then he would cry again. So I picked him up and I would feed him. Now remember, in this situation, I was alone at home with the baby, and I was feeding and then refeeding and then refeeding. And at one point, he just barfed all over me. It was like, oh my God, this is not what he needs. He doesn't need to keep feeding. But I didn't know what else to do because I became this kind of feeding on demand mom that was just in this loop of anytime there's a cry, that's what I'm going to do to hopefully meet his need of needing to feed. And that's when I decided, it was that point when he threw up all over me. That was the moment that changed everything for me with him. And I just decided, I'm not doing this anymore. It's not working for me to wing it. I'm just going to go back to being Dorit Shoshani. I'm going to do what I know because it works. And when they came home that night, I had told my husband, I said, look, you're going to stay out of it now. I'm going to rectify the situation. We're going to create stability and a sense of order in the home again. And I'm going to know when my child's hungry, and I'm not going to have this guessing game in my mind 24/7 because it was super stressful not to know what he needed. I just never knew what he needed. He was constantly needy. And that's where I started with step 1. And step 1 is full feeds. That's how you stop the chaos. the first point you want to put your focus on is full feeds. So for those of you who are in a chaotic loop, just check in. Are you feeding on demand? If you're feeding on demand, then we need to change that if it's creating chaos for you. If it works for you, go for it. But if it's not working for you because you're in this constant questioning, is my child hungry? What is his need? Is he tired? But he didn't eat, so I'm going to feed him, but then he fell asleep. But then he didn't eat enough, so he must be hungry. That's why he woke up early. I mean, this is nonstop. So the first point is full feeds, okay? And what does that mean? That means that we are feeding our child, not necessarily hyper-focusing on the clock, but also using the clock together with your child's cues to determine when it's time to feed. So I will devote 30 to 40 minutes per feed, and then I will wait until 2.5 to 3 hours later before I feed again. So it's 2.5 to 3 hours from the beginning of the first feed to the beginning of the next. And when I am feeding, I'm not just feeding for a few minutes. I'm actually intentional about devoting time for that feed. So I'm going to sit down with my child and I'm going to savor that moment and I'm going to enjoy the connection and we're going to make eye contact. And it's going to be a wonderful time together because that's the time I'm devoting to the full feed. And when that feed is over, okay, so I'm saying you devote between 30 to 40 minutes per feed. That doesn't mean your child's going to necessarily be feeding for 30, 40 minutes. At first, especially if they're coming from feeding on demand, they don't know to feed for that long. They don't have that necessity because they're just snacking all the time. So you might decide, okay, it's 12 o'clock now, so I'm going to give myself from 12 to 12:40. And within this 40-minute time frame, the buffet is open. So my child can feed as much as he needs. And so he'll feed for 3 minutes and then he's not interested and we'll take a break. And then maybe 5 minutes later, I'll reintroduce the feeding. And if he's interested, he'll eat some more. And then if not, we'll take another break. And then again after 10 minutes and again until I realize, okay, I've tried for 40 minutes. I filled him up as much as possible. Now there's no more feeding until the next feed. So we close the buffet and we wait till the next feed. Now, what does that do? That helps you not question your child's needs all the time. Because if you fed for 40 minutes and now, or for within that 40-minute time frame, I should say, most children don't feed for 40 minutes unless they're nursing and they're very small babies. If you fed within that time frame of 40 minutes and then an hour later your child starts crying, well, you know they're not hungry. You know that it's something else. So it's most likely they're tired, or maybe they need a diaper change, or maybe it's too hot or too cold. But at least you know that it's not a hunger issue. And then you're not overfeeding or feeding when it's not time for feeding or feeding and then they fall asleep. And it just is not productive. Okay, so the concept of full feeds is empowering because it gives you the confidence to be in the driver's seat around what your child needs, especially when it comes to feeding. You know that there's a time for feeding and you know that there's a time that that's no longer the need and you can put your focus elsewhere. Okay, so we just want to make sure we don't want to hyper focus on how much our child is eating, getting stressed out about that, saying, oh gosh, he didn't eat enough or he didn't take in enough, or, you know, maybe I need to find a different way to feed him because it's not working. You want to trust the process. So you set yourself up for success. We're going to feed every 2.5 to 3 hours from the beginning of the first feed to the beginning of the next. We devote 30 to 40 minutes per feed so that we know that we've given enough time for our child to maybe go on and off the breast or take some of the bottle, take a break, burp, and maybe even change diaper in between and then get back on the bottle. We want to make sure that we're devoting 40 minutes for a full feed. And if your child's older and is taking solids and liquids together, that's plenty of time to give that feed within that 40-minute time frame. And then after that, the buffet's closed and we can think about other needs. We don't necessarily need to always go back to maybe my child is hungry. Okay, that's going to be empowering for you. Point number 2 is, why are we aiming for full feeds with our child? Our bodies thrive in a rhythm. And so the rhythm goes rest and digest, rest and digest, rest and digest. Okay? It's not digest, 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 digest all day long, all night long, even though I have to say sometimes I'm guilty of that. But that's a whole separate topic. We want to have rest and digest. That means we want to have periods of time where our body can focus on digestion and is not constantly taking in more food. And it's important for the body. It's also important for the well-being of the parent. So rest and digest is one of the key points we want to put focus on. We also want to recognize that this creates confidence, right? So if we know that our child has fed, we no longer are questioning what our child needs. We know where to put our focus. And we also want to recognize that it helps regulate our body's circadian rhythm. So this whole rest and digest pattern or rhythm that we put our bodies in helps us have a healthy circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is just a fancy name for saying our body's day-night clock. And so the body recognizes the day and the night more easily when we're not feeding on demand. So while feeding on demand might be something necessary in the beginning after birth in order to have our child thrive, in order to help the body produce enough milk, there are definite needs around that. But when it becomes chaotic and no longer productive, you want to make sure that you recognize that and shift over to a more productive way of feeding, which would be called full feeds. Okay, and we're talking 2.5 hours from the beginning of the first to the beginning of the next feed. We're not waiting too long. We're not stretching our child beyond what's normal. This is very, very doable. Okay, and then the last point is that it encourages a full night's sleep. Because if you know that your child has been eating well throughout the day, and the body recognizes that there's been food consistently throughout the day within a rhythm, then the body can sleep at night, which is what it actually naturally wants to do. Okay, so it also encourages a full night's sleep. So how does that look? We want to prioritize meal times. We want to make sure that regardless of what's happening, we prioritize the time to feed. So if I'm out with a friend and it's time to feed, I'm not going to wait because I'm with a friend. I'm going to feed my child when it's necessary so that I can encourage full feeds at the right time. I also want to make sure that I recognize that feeds are opportunities for connection. Okay, so this is not about, sometimes people say like, oh, I put my child in the bouncy chair, I put the bottle up, I prop the bottle up with like a blanket or something, and he's great, he takes it himself, or my child loves to hold the bottle himself, so he'll hold it, I don't need to hold him. But guys, we're missing a wonderful opportunity for connection. These are moments where the eyes can connect and where we can gaze at our child and light up with delight just looking at them. It's very powerful. You don't want to leave your child eating on their own. So opportunities for connection through those full feeds. And when a feed is not 3 minutes or 30 seconds, then it actually encourages connection. Okay? And the last reason that we want to put focus on is that we're feeding full feeds as a way of nourishing our child, and we're not feeding to achieve quiet. And a lot of you have heard me before. You know that that's a thing that I talk about, trying to achieve quiet, just putting out fires so that, there's no noise, sort of say, in the background. But we actually want to nourish our children, and we nourish them intentionally by offering full feeds. Okay? So I hope that this sheds some light. If you guys recognize that my story is also your story, if you're having a constant questioning around, wait a minute, I think he's hungry, but then I just fed him, but wait, he just barfed, and so maybe he was overfed, and so wait, when's the next time I should feed him, but is he tired or not? Or, oh my God, craziness. Then you just need full feeds. That's all you need, and you'll get back to baseline. It's like from there, everything can take off in a much smoother way. And guys, if you're looking to dive in deeper around feeds, I have an entire bundle specifically around feeds in my online digital course. We talk about full feeds. We also talk about nighttime feeds and weaning off of nighttime feeds. We talk about a concept called dream feeds. We'll talk about combining liquid and solid feeds, graduating off of milk feeds. I mean, the sky's the limit here. If you're interested in diving deeper, then I suggest that you check out my online digital course. Thanks for being with me, guys. I will see you in the next video.